Impenetrable police lines. A belt of empty land 50 miles wide. Scientists and soldiers. A hideous sore on the face of the planet permanently sealed off. The Zone is a complicated system of traps. The Zone is an enticing and terrifying reflection of our mistakes and our desires. For decades now, the name Stalker has been donned by those misfits, criminals, and thrill seekers who yearn to find themselves in the Zone, in various pieces of beloved media, and in real life. But the above quoted words were written decades before this, decades before the world they described came to life before our eyes. The culture of Stalker as an idea crosses genre boundaries, crosses the line between fiction and reality, and the identifiable features of its most famous media, Chernobyl, a Russian or Ukrainian setting, anomalous entities, mysterious artifacts with life-changing effects, none of these are what Stalker is actually about. Why and how does the world keep coming back to Stalker? How does its universe seem to, chillingly, continue to predict our own time after time? In a cross-dissection of these major entries in what I'll call the Stalker canon, as well as how they've influenced reality and back again, we'll uncover where the truth of Stalker lies. Never what you see on the surface, but rather what lurks underneath, unseen and every bit more important. The term Stalker, the name we call those who venture into the Zone, was, contrary to popular belief, neither an acronym or a Slavic word with a deeper meaning. Authors Boris and Arkady Strugatsky coined the term to describe their beloved zone-crossing misfits simply because they liked how it sounded. Inspired by the Rudyard Kipling novel Stalky and Company, the Strugatskys found the word carried some sense of defiance, mischievousness, and cunning in its Russian pronunciation. It wasn't actually until years later that they learned their Stalker was actually Stalker. But regardless, the name stuck. An important note, this video will not spoil any elements of the 2024 game Stalker 2, as it was written and produced before the game will have come out. It will, however, contain extensive discussion of the major plot points of the 1972 novel Roadside Picnic by the Strugatsky brothers, the 1979 film Stalker by Andrei Tarkovsky, and the 2007 game Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl. These pieces are all, at this point, decades old. That being said, I personally had never read, watched, or played any of these entries in the Stalker canon, and I do believe that going into them blind without spoilers was the correct way to consume them. So if you haven't, I suggest you do the same, at least with the book, and then come back to this video to tie everything together. A stalker is he who ventures into the Zone illegally. In Roadside Picnic, it's specifically the Zone in Harmont, a small town in an unnamed area of North America. The main character, Redrick Schubert, or Red, actually starts the novel working legally for the International Institute of Extraterrestrial Cultures. What is the Zone? Roadside Picnic, unlike its successors, is an overt first contact story. The zones, plural, appeared suddenly with flashes of light and roars thunder 13 years prior. The aliens left as soon as they had arrived, leaving several anomalous areas filled with inexplicable phenomena in their wake. And the zones, alongside scientific study and experimentation, have created a sort of secondary illicit culture and economy surrounding them. Stalkers venture into the Zone illegally, collect swag or harmless artifacts left by the alien visit, and sell them to dealers for a profit. We follow Red Schubert at several stages of his life, and through interactions with his family, his friends, peers, and enemies, come to learn how the visitation has permanently altered Harmont and its people, how Red's relationship with being a stalker evolves from one of pride and camaraderie to disgust and fear to hopelessness and anguish and back again. But despite the incredibly rich philosophy and subtext of which we will dive into, don't you worry, Picnic is not a deep or mind-bending story at face value. It's filled with tension, action, incredibly cinematic tonal beats. The world of the Zone is presented in a way that is so straightforward it's almost opaque at first reading, which I think is intentional. As witnesses to its world, we are at first glance taken in, enamored with its strangeness, its beauty. We fill the shoes of the amateurs who Red brings into the Zone for the first time. This interest in deep texture and aesthetics is something that I believe instantly became a core tenet of Stalker, the universe as media. If there's anything that Tarkovsky seemed to want to take most directly from Roadside Picnic, it was this. The village stretched beside the western border of town. Once upon a time, there were cottages here. Gardens, fruit orchards, and the summer residences of city officials and factory administrators. There were lovely green spaces, small lakes with clean sandy banks, transparent birch groves, and ponds stocked with carp. The factory stench and acrid factory smoke never reached here. Now, everything was deserted and abandoned. It was now light out. The world was wet, quiet, and sleepy. The film is, in Tarkovsky's fashion, almost a poetic adaptation. The stalker, unnamed in this version, leads two men into the zone, the professor and the writer, in search of the room, a place where any wish is granted. In one of its most memorable sequences, the group ride atop a small rail cart through the abandoned outskirts of the drab industrial wilderness of their hometown. It's a slow burn sequence, so meditative it almost lulls the viewer to sleep along with the on-screen characters. Like waking from a dream, we suddenly transition from black and white to vivid color for the first time close to 40 minutes into the film. Here's the zone, and instantly a chill runs down my spine. I feel it every time, but I still don't know whether it's the zone greeting me or a stalker's nerves acting up. Every time I figure I'll go back and ask others if they feel it too, and every time I forget. And so is the book. A slow burn, that is. In Roadside Picnic, the vast majority of the story takes place in the town of Harmond. There are 3 key missions into the zone. In the first chapter, halfway through the book, an immersive sequence which begins in media res as Red and his associate, the Vulture Burbridge, deal with the aftermath of a zone mission gone wrong, and at the book's end. Stalker begins in the nearby town and follows the characters in real time as they enter the zone. The difference between the time spent outside and the time spent in are clear boundaries. Red, throughout the book, seems to become more and more jaded with the zone. Its inherent physical danger, of course, many people he's known have died there, but more the economy surrounding it, the young, ignorant opportunists who flock to Harmon in search of fame, riches, or tourism, the businessmen who are willing to pay top dollar for increasingly dangerous artifacts. To have children is extremely dangerous for a stalker as well, and Red's daughter is born with strange deformities. She's covered head to toe in fur, he and his wife lovingly calling her the monkey. Providing for his family is the one thing that keeps Red returning to the zone, despite his growing distaste for it. The stalker's daughter in the film, a child of the zone, is born with birth defects as well, and his wife laments his continued separation from his family as he bounces between the zone and prison. The characters are different people once they're inside the zone. Just getting there and getting out safely are by far the most arduous parts of their journey. It's almost chilling how prophetic the description of this experience was. Just less than 7 years after the release of Andrei Tarkovsky's Stalker, reactor number 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant exploded, and the zone was made real. A sudden accidental event, permanently altering an otherwise innocent residential landscape in a sinister way unseen to the naked eye. A zone cordoned by scientists and soldiers shrouded in secrecy as deadly as it was enticing. A place which silently kills those who stay in it over time and dooms the children of even those who leave. It is important as we move from fiction to fact to recognize and respect the very real human impact of the Chernobyl disaster. Many lost their lives as a direct result, and tens of thousands more at minimum have been forced to give up normalcy and way of life as a result of it in a way few who weren't there will likely ever be able to comprehend. This video in no way wishes to sensationalize one of the worst ecological disasters in human history as a piece of fiction to dissect for entertainment. Rather, I feel that the reality of Chernobyl, in the way its existence strengthened the Stalker fandom as a movement, serves to illustrate the universality of the concept Stalker as a universe, as an idea, deals with. It was almost too perfect a setting, and the game Stalker: Shadow of Chernobyl, published in 2007, makes the obvious connection. Unlike Picnic and Stalker, life outside is never once shown, never mentioned or discussed. Shadow of Chernobyl takes place entirely in the zone, where thousands of stalkers representing different goals and ideologies call it home, some temporarily, some permanently. Some stalkers are here to see the zone destroyed. To them it is evil, a curse on humanity. Duty and the Ukrainian military both see the zone this way. Gudalin, a stalker in Roadside Picnic, comes to feel this way too, and he goes out of his way to collect artifacts on the black market and return them to the zone to contain what he sees as its spreading influence. Some believe it is a blessing for the world, that it must be protected and cherished for the great things it contains. Both Freedom and Monolith feel this way, or the Stalker in the film, all for extremely different reasons that we'll discuss later. And some are there for profit, free stalkers and mercenaries, or Red and the Vulture Burbridge in Roadside Picnic. But none of these affiliations are ever explicitly said out loud, stated directly, and the Stalker universe is often like this, elements brought up in passing or without clear definition. Red, as narrator, brings up things offhand that he knows by name without describing them. Hell slime, bug traps, burning fuzz, black sparks, screechers, and bracelets. Shadow of Chernobyl does the same thing. Many of the game's subtleties could be missed without the player's own proactive investigation. The first mentions of some of its most important plot elements, such as the existence of the Brain Scorcher or Wish Granter, are in blink and you'll miss it NPC interactions with completely optional side characters. This is where the soul of the game's world lies, in its natural interactions and unplanned player-controlled or witnessed events. Several elements are directly borrowed: the throwing of bolts to locate or disrupt anomalies. Several anomalies themselves, artifacts, and locations such as the Stalker Bar are taken directly from the book and film. As a whole, in this way, the game is constructed in the same way the novel and film are. Through living in it, we come to see the zone as a stalker does. But the most interesting way that Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl adapts its source material is not through direct reference or plot, but through gameplay. Firstly, the collection of artifacts, called swag in Roadside Picnic. There is no fast travel system in Shadow of Chernobyl, a common mechanic in open world RPGs. Stalking is about the journey, about the treacherous and slow walk back. Quote, "That's the zone for you. Come back with swag, a miracle. Come back alive, success. Come back with a patrol bullet in your ass, good luck. And everything else, that's fate." Throughout the novel and shown visually in the film, being a stalker means crawling on your face through the mud, cold, wet, and exhausted, evading patrols and death the entire way. The feeling of managing my inventory, deciding which artifacts, weapons, and supplies, gear to hold onto, balancing my greed for profit with risk of injury or death, the slow and arduous slog back to the bar to sell everything off, this was the feeling of being a stalker, tied directly into the core fundamental systems of gameplay. Important too was the adaptation of one of the book and film's most striking but subtle elements, the permanence of death. When traversing the various locations of the zone in Shadow of Chernobyl, the player will fight, destroy human and animal alike, but they will also come across evidence of violence or accidental death unrelated to their journey. Stalker's now famous A-Life system means that not only do NPCs on every part of the map persist and interact with each other independently of the player's actions, but their bodies remain in their resting place for a significant amount of time, becoming constant reminders of what came before, and in many cases, physical markers of danger. Quote, "The map had two X's, one on the slope of the hill with the tree and the other on top of the rock scree, Poodle and Four Eyes. The trail went between them," end quote. Early in the game, I met with Fox, a loner stalker holding out against mutant dogs off the side of the road in Cordon. After asking him some questions, I went my own way. Several days later, passing back through the same area, I looted a dead body, as I'd done hundreds of times at this point, only to double take. It was Fox. There was something striking about realizing that one of the first friendly faces I'd seen in the zone had perished unceremoniously while I was off adventuring somewhere else. Whether you've had the privilege of meeting them or not, every body in the zone serves as a constant reminder of its danger, and in a melancholy way, immortalizes that stalker. Their names repeated by those who follow in their footsteps, their final resting place a repeated reminder of who they were and what they may have done to lead them ending up as one more discarded item littered around the zone as you pass it time and time again. I've been spending a lot of time at cafes recently, reading and rereading the novel, jotting down notes or copying over my annotations to a cloud document. And since I've been working out in public so much lately, I've been doing what I always do on a public network, connect via a VPN, namely NordVPN, the sponsor of today's video. But funny story, I already used NordVPN before they even contacted me for this. You've probably heard of what a VPN or virtual private network is. It hides your IP address by routing your internet connection through any number of locations on Earth. Otherwise, when you don't use one, your IP is being broadcast all over to any website you've ever visited, to the internet service provider that's running the Wi-Fi that you're connected to, etc., meaning your information is being used behind your back to feed you a specifically tailored version of the internet. Nowadays, I use Nord mostly for that reason: security and anonymity, making sure that my IP is hidden, that my information is safe on the off chance that I connect to the wrong Wi-Fi address wherever I may be. But Nord can connect you via anywhere: Europe, Africa, Central America, wherever, and this is where the fun and interesting stuff comes in. Many may not realize this, but the internet that you see is not the internet that others see in other parts of the world. That's why I originally subscribed to Nord years ago, by the way, to get access to a Netflix show that was being removed in my location. But it's not just what you can see, but how much companies want you to pay for it. Companies price things based on what they believe customers will be able to afford, meaning that something may cost significantly more when viewed in the United States than that exact same thing being viewed on an IP in Turkey or India. Streaming services, digital product subscriptions, travel tickets, even real tangible products could be significantly cheaper if you view them from a different IP location. And at that point, the VPN basically pays for itself. And especially so since they're running a Black Friday deal, a significantly discounted 2-year plan plus 4 additional bonus months of the service for free. So if you decide to sign up via my link in the description or pinned comment, nordvpn.com/Rilo, R-I-L-O-E, you're going to be getting the best, cheapest deal on Nord services that there is, period. And if you aren't happy with it, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. So just try the service out, see if it's for you, and if it isn't, no sweat. The internet should be a free, fair, and open place to do what you really want, in my opinion, so keep it that way by signing up at nordvpn.com/Rilo for the best deal on it that there is. This is a product I literally use constantly, and I really appreciate them helping to support the channel today. Stalkers, with their special nicknames, whether living or dead, come across as living legends. One such legendary figure is S.T.A.L.K.E.R. He and his group were some of the only stalkers to have infiltrated deep into the zone, even supposedly reaching as far as the Chernobyl nuclear power plant itself. The player, in the shoes of the Marked One, awakes at the start of the game, memory gone, other than the task of finding and killing S.T.A.L.K.E.R. After following a long trail of breadcrumbs through the various labs, facilities, bases of the Chernobyl zone, you discover that you are, in fact, S.T.A.L.K.E.R. And after fighting through hell and reaching the CNPP yourself, you are lured in by the voice of the Wish Granter, an entity sitting in the heart of Reactor 4, which will grant any wish to those who enter.
Иди ко мне. Ты обретешь то, что заслуживаешь.
The Room, the Wish Granter, and the Golden Sphere, the idea of an entity which reaches into one's innermost desires, is possibly the most key central motif of the Stalker canon, other than the zone itself. The Golden Sphere appears suddenly in Roadside Picnic, brought up out of nowhere by Red's associate, the Vulture Burbridge, when he is horribly wounded by an anomaly. He begs Red to save his life, saying he will take him to the Golden Sphere, somewhere deep in the center of the zone. It's an object that will grant the wish of anyone who reaches it. Red at the time doesn't believe in this legend and brushes it off. When Red finally ventures into the zone for the last time in the novel, it's with the mission of retrieving the Golden Sphere, the Wish Granter, to sell it as swag for $500,000. He brings the Vulture's son, Arthur, with him, a handsome young man with a sheltered, idyllic worldview. As they march and stumble and crawl their way through stinking swamps of ooze, and as lightning strikes stones above their heads, and as they writhe in pain through invisible fire, Red struggles to understand the paradoxical nature of his life that has brought him here. He doesn't believe in miracles. He's a self-made man. He's worked for everything he has. And yet, he yearns for a miracle, for the Golden Sphere to end his endless rat race for profit to feed his family. He feels that he's become a slave, doomed to endlessly follow in others' footsteps. He's been led along by people like the Vulture, taken advantage of. And all the while, he continues the cycle, taking advantage of others, leading them along to nudge himself a bit further. As the Stalker in the film leads his two clients, the writer and professor, through the wilderness, they argue about the reasons they are there as well, about the validity of the Stalker's warnings about the zone's danger. Each of their philosophical musings, the value of creativity and intelligence versus the necessities of humanity, the plights and suffering of people, they seem to teach each man something about themselves, about what they really want, what they will ask the Wish Granter to give them. Eventually, when they do reach the room, the writer fears that what he wants will inherently be bad or meaningless: money, women, power, and he refuses to enter it. The professor has brought a bomb. A 20-kiloton bomb, which he plans to use to destroy the room, lest some bad actor use it for selfish gain. Somebody like the writer. The Stalker erupts at him, begs him to leave things be. He needs the zone. It's the only place he feels free. The others accuse him of selfishness. He's using these people that he guides for his own power trip. In the zone, he is God. He chooses who lives and dies. He's a louse who feeds off the misery of others for his own benefit.
Я ведь перевожу сюда таких же, как я, несчастных, замучен. Им не на что больше надеяться. А я могу, понимаете, я могу им помочь. Никто им помочь не может, а я гнида могу.
The room must exist. Others must have faith in it, for if they do, the Stalker can continue to have faith in humanity. In the end, none of the men enter the room. When Red and Arthur reach the Golden Sphere, it's just lying there in a quarry, where it's always been, one of the many pieces of discarded detritus from the visit. And the boy runs giddily to the sphere, shouting his wish: happiness, free for everyone, no one will be forgotten. And then he dies, twisted like a rag by the grinder, an invisible anomaly which lurks in front of the sphere. Red came to the zone for profit. He's here to retrieve the sphere and sell it, but in the end, Something comes over him and he just wants it all to end. Every one of his wishes has always been self-serving, are all just a band-aid to the endless cruelty of humanity, and he shouts out to the sphere for it to look into his soul and find what he really wants. He knows that deep down, he yearns for something better, but he can't grasp it. Through the layers of greed, fighting ambition, fighting self-destruction, all the faces who have ever wronged him cloud his mind. Quote, "I don't know how to think. Those bastards never let me learn how to think." The only thing he can grasp are the romantic final words of the young man he's just sacrificed. Happiness free for everyone, and let no one be forgotten. The search for the answers of the zone takes S.T.A.L.K.E.R across it. He infiltrates and deactivates the mind-controlling brain scorcher, makes his way through Pripyat where the different ideological factions all war over the material wealth contained within. He bypasses all of this, and after defeating remnants of the Monolith faction, zealots who follow the Wish Granter religiously, who guard its entrance in the center of the CNPP sarcophagus, he finally makes it. He enters the room, and I face the Wish Granter, the Golden Sphere, myself. S.T.A.L.K.E.R approaches it, stating simply, "I want to be rich." He's showered with golden coins, smiling giddily. It's all an illusion, and the rusted support beams of the sarcophagus shift and give way, crushing him. The camera pulls back, and we see S.T.A.L.K.'s hand still grasping for a nut he mistook for gold. He dies a stalker. He dies greedy. As I stated at the beginning, I went into all of this media completely blind, and let me tell you, I sort of blinked in disbelief at the credits screen. Was that seriously it? Of course, this is one of the false endings to the game. I had ignorantly followed my waypoint to the Wish Granter, assuming based on the book and film that this was the ending of the game. The Wish Granter reads one's innermost need, the thing that drives a person beyond what they themselves can comprehend, beyond what they've even asked out loud. This is a theme which permeates all of Stalker media, that we don't know what we actually want, and that it's almost never what we wish for outwardly. Stalker SOC's Wish Granter endings are different based on the player's actions during the game. The "I want to be rich" ending is reserved for players who are greedy and profit-driven, anyone with over 100,000 rubles on their character at the end of the game. Not knowing where the game would end, I had literally been carrying a 200,000 ruble exoskeleton in my backpack for the game's entire final section on hopes of selling it later. Suffice it to say, the Wish Granter gave me exactly what I deserved. The disappointment and heartbreak I felt in receiving such an anticlimactic end for the Marked I did something special. It actually revealed my true desire as a person, as a player. Not to be rich, but for satisfaction, closure, peace, for a different ending. Being rich is what many people want, to be able to rule the world, to have control over others, but I do truly believe that this is not what people actually want in the depths of their soul. It's what society tells them they should want. It's what they need to want, given the state of the world. What people truly want is probably unknowable, but the closest thing might be something like contentedness, to be able to breathe, to feel at peace. Red regrets his wretched life, the people he sacrificed and led to their dooms, both accidentally and with malice. He spent most of his life grinding for profit, risking his life for money under the pretext of helping his family, but it is the very act of stalking that led his daughter to be born deformed. He regrets that his greatest wishes are for the downfall of those who've wronged him. His whole life has been blinded by conflict, of revenge. What he really yearns for is to want what he wants. Something good, to be able to think, for his mind to be free. His wish is to be a good person. And in these final moments, as he mindlessly shouts out for happiness free for everyone, his wish is granted. There's something about the Stalker world, a feeling, a thing that pulls us in, whether we're reading, watching, or playing, or trekking through the damp brambles of the outskirts of Pripyat in hopes of catching a sunrise over the silent Ukrainian wilderness. The Russian word Toska is famous in literature for its supposed untranslatability, but its feelings are absolutely able to be understood. A combination of yearning, sadness, melancholia, boredom, depression, wistfulness, grief, and longing. It's the specific sense I get looking out over the desolate, low-fidelity landscape of Pripyat as distant howls roll over the hills, looking out across the landscape, saying, "What is that over there?" It's a quiet moment in a foggy meadow where dew sticks to the rusted carcasses of abandoned military hardware manufactured in a country that no longer exists, captured on a film stock that is no longer produced. by a film crew of which many members are no longer alive. He climbed out onto the road and walked forward, shivering and stuffing his hands into his damp jumpsuit pockets. It was now light out. The world was wet, quiet, and sleepy. From here, it was easy to see the police outpost, a little trailer on wheels, 3 windows shining with light, and smoke rising from the tall, narrow chimney. The patrols were probably cold and weary from the night's vigil, and were now warming up in their trailer, nodding off with cigarettes stuck to their lips. The immersion and emotions the zone brings transcend fiction and reality, and the fact that the world of Stalker continues to hold relevance in people's minds and is reflected in reality over and over again. I don't believe that this is a coincidence. Tosca is a concept that has long permeated Russian literature, but of course the feelings described are not unique to it, just as Roadside Picnic, Stalker, and Shadow of Chernobyl have all resonated deeply with different people all over the world. The Strugatsky's book was of course a product of the Soviet 1970s and served to both critique Western capitalism as well as the artistic idealism of the Soviet Union that they struggled against to get the book published in the first place. But the actual core concepts of the work, of the nature of intelligence, of humanity's continued attempt and failure to rise above nature, they're timeless. The climactic moments at the Sphere are the end of Roadside Picnic's plot, but they aren't exactly the climax of the story. Throughout the novel, as well as the film and game, of course, we're witnesses to this world, this zone. Empirically, we can come to conclusions about how it works, its causes and effects. Throw some nuts and bolts and they fall straight, you can move forward. They fall wrong and something's off. But we don't receive any answers. The world is presented as the characters would be able to understand it, which is to say, not at all. Roadside Picnic follows Red for most of its duration, burning slowly to the climax of its story world, a conversation between 2 different men in a bar, where the zone, the visitation, and their meanings are finally discussed in detail. Valentine Pillman, a scientist and Nobel laureate, chats over drinks with Richard Noonan, a man working for the government to disrupt stalkers and halt the flow of objects out of the zone. All of the strange phenomena the stalkers have encountered, the dangers, the mysteries, they're suddenly laid out on the table. Noonan asks Valentine what he thinks of the visit. What could the aliens have wanted? Why did they come? How will the visit fundamentally change humanity? What does it mean? What will happen to humanity if and when they return? Ultimately, Valentine brings forth his hypothesis, the Roadside Picnic. In science fiction, and in general when we think of first contact with extraterrestrial life, humans tend to, perhaps wishfully, imagine that aliens are like us, intelligent, ambitious. They've come to tell us something, to warn us, perhaps to provide us with some great knowledge, or perhaps their visitation is a test to see if we are on their level, are worthy of true contact. In other cases, they are here to wipe us out, to take from us our resources, our Earth. But Valentine imagines a picnic. A car pulls off the road to a meadow. The passengers eat, drink, and smoke. They leave wrappers, trash, detritus. Their car's tires track mud from a far-off puddle, and its engine leaks oil and grease, and minutes later, they take off as quickly as they came. Page 132, quote, "A picnic by the side of some space road, and you ask whether they'll come back," end quote. Humanity has found incredible uses for some objects found in the zone. Space cells or batteries provide electrical power, duplicate themselves like cells when cut into pieces, and are now used to power cars, a seemingly limitless source of energy. Some phenomena from the zone mentioned offhand are obviously deadly, hell slime and death lamps, and some seem to violate our very laws of physics, such as black sparks, small stone-like objects which refract light shown into them, but at a delay equal to their physical size. Noonan hypothesizes these may actually be massive amounts of 4-dimensional space viewable from our 3 dimensions as physical objects. Despite the mere existence of these objects providing incredible implications for science, their mystery simply hasn't been solved, and they are worn as jewelry. Noonan is upset upon hearing the Roadside Picnic hypothesis. If this were true, humanity are nothing but a garbage dump to alien life, as unimportant as an anthill on the sidewalk. Or worse, the aliens don't even recognize Earth as containing life at all, much less intelligence. The two argue over the nature of intelligence, how we tend to define it, how these definitions may be wrong. A monkey presses a button and receives a banana. It can repeat this behavior, but it will never understand the true nature of the relationship between buttons and bananas. That is to say, inherently, nothing at all. Humans can collect space cells from the zone, multiply them through division. When placed in electrical engines, they can be used for power. But this reverse engineering says absolutely nothing about the space cell's original purpose. if there is one. The prospect that humanity's ideas of intelligence, of causality, of physics may all be fundamentally misunderstood is frightening. It's even worse for scientists, theorists, quote, because we merely don't understand a thing, but they at least understand how much they don't understand, unquote. The true ending of Shadow of Chernobyl, for which I recovered a prior save and completed the entire CNPP sequence again to experience, serves as yet another philosophical reimagining of Red's poignant words as he runs down the quarry to the Golden Sphere. S.T.A.L.K.E.R discovers a secret room deep in the CNPP, heavily guarded by Monolith, and after destroying a containment mechanism, learns the real truth of the zone. After the 1986 Chernobyl disaster, a group of scientists conducted secret experiments in the heart of the sarcophagus, far from the world's prying eyes. Their research was into the discovery of the noosphere, an energy field surrounding the Earth comprised of the thoughts and consciousnesses of all sentient beings. They linked their minds together into a being called the common consciousness and attempted to alter the noosphere through the removal of humanity's negative aspects: greed, anger, cruelty. Things went wrong, and the sea consciousness ended up tearing a hole in the noosphere, allowing it to pass through and affect the biosphere, or the ecological systems of Earth, creating what became known as the Zone. As best as it can, the sea consciousness continues to work and tinker, trying to find a way to reverse the effects of the Zone, but their work creates massive surges of energy, called blowouts or emissions, which destroy life on the surface and extend the borders of the Zone by kilometers. The Wish Granter is, of course, also man-made. It's a trap, a deterrent to anyone attempting to reach the sea consciousness. It brainwashes those who venture near, these stalkers becoming Monolith, furthering the Zone's physical defenses. It's this disappointing nature of the answer of the story's most gripping questions that feels the closest to the original media. Essentially, in all versions of Stalker, the entire Zone, everything it represents, the miracles found within, it's all a farce. This scar on the face of the Earth was born from the hubris of a small group of men. It's a meaningless accident that now serves as a mirror. Rather than a divine answer to cosmic questions, it says almost nothing about itself and everything about us through how we interact with it. We learn from Arthur's death in the final moments of Roadside Picnic that the Vulture, Red's friend, has visited the Golden Sphere repeatedly, every time bringing some stalker with him as bait for the grinder, in order to reach this wish granter himself. The sphere grants one's innermost wish, the wish they don't even realize they want, the Vulture's idyllic, perfect children untouched by the usual curse that befalls stalker children were some, his long life and survival, despite all odds, trip after trip after trip into the Zone over the years, his financial success as a stalker were others. Wish after wish, sacrifice after sacrifice, the Vulture used these poor souls like currency to grant him one more selfish benefit. Earlier in the book, he actually admits this to Red, quote, "Do you know why old Burbridge is still alive, do you? Bob the gorilla is dead, Pharaoh Banker is no more, he was a real stalker, and the Slug too. Norman Four Eyes, Callaghan, Scabby Pete, all of them. Only I'm left. Do you know why?" End quote. Their twisted remains, these granted wishes, remain on the path to the sphere, as do the bodies of every stalker who ever died in the Zone. They remain sitting static for decades in the Zone's silence, now serving as markers on the map the Vulture uses to pass safely through. Red has done the same, using the Vulture's own sun as his key to the sphere. Red realizes at the end that stalkers are not heroes or legends. They're the same as working stiffs, each one straining against the yoke, smiling through their teeth, one man's successes taken on another's broken back. And Red's life was no better, but at the end, he's had enough. Valentine and Noonan argue over the nature of humanity and of intelligence. How can we define an intelligent species? Is it the ability to harness the powers of the surrounding world without destroying the said world? No, that can't be it. That's not us, Noonan says. Is it the separation between master and pet, between owner and dog? The dog can listen, can understand patterns and follow orders, but it can't speak, can't act on its own once trained. Valentine suggests that perhaps intelligence is the ability for a species to surpass instinct, to act in pointless or unnatural ways, to act against logic. This definition hypothesis for human intelligence is that it is an instinct itself, an immature, unevolved one. Instinctive activity is almost always useful or natural, a recoil from pain, a tightening of the muscles with fear, the fight, flight, or freeze response. Perhaps intellectual intelligence is another incomplete instinct. After another few million years, we will cease making the mistakes and irrationalities which define intelligence. The instinct will have matured. Quote, and then if anything in the universe changes, we will happily become extinct. Again, precisely because we've lost the art of making mistakes, that is, trying various things not prescribed by a rigid code, unquote. The main characters in the Stalker canon are fundamentally flawed people. They are imperfect. They reside in struggle. Red is a coarse, angry man, a serial alcoholic who, despite having the best interests of his family theoretically in mind, continuously follows an unbelievably dangerous lifestyle, fleeing from authorities and spending years of his daughter's childhood in prison. The Stalker brings others through the hell of the zone in order to help find themselves, ultimately in order to affirm his own faith in the faith of humanity. Ultimately, he is a selfish man. Science fiction stories are often populated by brilliant minds, heroes, and legendary figures, but Stalker shows us how the brilliant can, in fact, be just as helpless and flawed as laymen. Red's final shouts of happiness free for everyone are certainly quite similar to the sea consciousness's interventions into the noosphere, an attempt at brute forcing the removal of bad traits from humanity. And by doing this, they brought the zone into being, creating more division, more factions of ideology, more conflict and death. S.T.A.L.K.E.R in the end is offered the chance to join the sea consciousness, to add another mind to their supposed efforts to contain the zone and end the chaos started in 2006. He refuses, and after fighting through a final contingent of Monolith, eventually reaches the sea consciousness and kills them. Most would come to the same conclusion being put in that position, but it is neither a measured nor logical action. The sea consciousness, with S.T.A.L.K.E.'s inclusion, could have potentially repaired the noosphere, reversing the zone and saving humanity from itself, but because of S.T.A.L.K.E.'s actions, we will never know. He is not a hero. He is an ordinary man who, through circumstance and perseverance, has done extraordinary things, and he does the job that is in front of him, as the alternative, doing nothing at all, is empirically worse. It was brilliant minds who created the Chernobyl NPP who made the fundamental mistakes which brought it to ruin. It was brilliant minds who made the calculations and assessments for how to save the world from the fallout of the disaster. But it was ordinary people, working people, who took the accident and translated it into a historical event to be remembered and learned from, rather than the end of the world as we know it, literally by imbibing the radiation into their own bodies as they worked to liquidate the site, worked to entomb it and protect future generations from the deadly mistakes of the past. And they continue to do so today. Similarly to Noonan and Valentine, the writer in Stalker wonders about the nature of intelligence as well. He posits that the ultimate goal for a person is true creativity, for humanity to be able to look at itself and interpret. I will say, having gone in blind to these three pieces of media, I'm inclined to agree. There's something attractive about the ability to take the meaninglessness of the cosmos, the entropy, the scatter, to take it into one's own mind and body, rework it, sort it, and turn it into something with meaning. As Valentine states, there may have been no difference between something as deadly as hell slime and something as meaningless as a black spark to the aliens. It is us who imbue things with meaning, who apply labels such as good, evil, chaos, and order. By doing this, by creating new worlds which reflect our own, like the Strugatskys did with ideas and places like Harmont, like the Zone, by creating something from nothing, we are God. But maybe that's all a bit too self-centered.
Это, во всяком случае, бескорыстно, в отличие от всех других человеческих действий. Великие иллюзии, образы абсолютной истины. Вы меня слушаете, профессор?
О каком бескорыстии вы говорите? Люди еще с голоду мрут. Вы что, с Луны свалились?
In reality, maybe the best humanity can do is to continue on, despite our best efforts, to live. Stalker tells us that the victory is never actually at the finish line. It is not at the end of the story. In quoting the Tao Te Ching, the Stalker speaks on how softness, weakness are the signs of life. The harder something is, the stronger, the closer it is to death. It's in walking the path, in continuing on, in movement, that humankind succeeds. Quote, what makes a man great? Is it that he recreated nature? That he harnessed the forces of almost cosmic proportions? That in a brief time he has conquered the planet and opened a window onto the universe? No. it is that despite all this, he has survived and intends to continue doing so. After killing the sea consciousness, S.T.A.L.K.E.R lays down in a field, exhausted, and shares a sentiment that is perhaps the most apt description of humankind. I don't know if I was right or wrong. I guess I'll never know. But I made it, and I guess I should be thankful for that. I'm Rilo, and I like to talk about things that I think are cool. Hope you enjoyed this and found it interesting, and I'll catch you soon.